we're talking about the women's game. Obviously, the popularity of the game has definitely grown, obviously, over recent years. And obviously that's probably down to the success of the England women's team. But even before that, they'd started to make the game professional within the UK from women's football's perspective. There are some people, however, some dinosaurs we'll call them, who believe that that women's football isn't of a good enough quality to be aired on TV. Had an LBC caller call in saying why are they shoving women's football down our throats? That was one comment. I'm not sure how you shove something down your throat on TV. You're basically saying that all TV programs are shoved down your throat then. And then you have Joey Barton, who also made some disparaging comments about the quality of the penalties against Sweden. There wasn't many penalties scored, but also just generally about the quality of the game as well. So really, I mean, listen, let's not dress it up. It's misogynistic comments that Joey Barton has been making. And there are some people that are jumping on that bandwagon and kind of supporting him and his comments and blah, blah, blah. So I suppose, the question is, why do we think there is this, or why do we think there's this, how can I put it, this group, a small group, who are so, I would say, disparaging towards women's football?
Is it a reflection of the society that we're living in terms of people with their preconceived ideas, narratives, and opinions of how the world should be? But if you look in terms of how the world has grown, how the world has developed, how modern technology and science and things have progressed from that kind of viewpoint. And in my view, those viewpoints are becoming fewer and farther between, because people with those opinions are kind of being shut down.
Yeah.
Now, when anything's new, it's not the finished article, it's getting better. If you look at football over the last 20 years, look at football for the Premier League when it was just Division 1. Look at the state of the pitches. Look at, if you got a cartilage injury then, your career was finished.
Yeah.
With the advancement of science, with the advancement of an understanding of injuries, we're now able to, you're able to have an operation and get your Achilles repaired. I don't know how long-term that is.
Yeah.
You look at the balls they used to use back in the day and the head injuries that they used to get. Like, there's people still campaigning for funding to understand injuries to players that hit the ball.
And there's been a rule brought in around that, even with the today's balls now. They're a lot lighter than they were back in the day with them heavy cases with the laces on them. But there's a rule saying that, in terms of headed kind of activities in training, that should be reduced, right? I'm sure that's for a certain percentage of training now. That's
at a professional level.
Correct.
At grassroots level, they're saying they're taking heading out of it altogether. I don't know. I suppose I'm stuck in that thinking, how can you play football without heading the football?
Exactly,
So there's always going to be that kind of question. But that's
it's a skill that needs to be practiced.
But that's not taken away from the fact of we're aware of what the impact is now. Now we're aware of the impact. We have to do something about it. But I think it even evolves into the women's game.
Yeah.
As more money goes into the women's game, as there's better coaching, as women developing the love for the sport and to wanting to play the sport and get better at the sport, the players are going to get progressively better.
That's right.
So is women's football going to be the same in 2, 5, 10 years' time? No. I'd imagine that it would get better, just like any other football would get better.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit close-minded and narrow-minded and trying to obtain likes to kind of disregard it.
Yeah. I think it's down to expectation, right? I think, we've got a product within, men's football, the Premier League, Champions League, World Cups, we've got memories going back 30, 40 years, of great games, great players, so on and so forth. And I think there's probably an unrealistic expectation that the women's game should be on par with the men's game. It's a very unrealistic expectation.
They haven't had the investment.
Well, that's where I'm going, exactly, because it's such a, in terms of it being a professional sport now, it's still in its infancy regarding that, right? But I think going to any game with an expectation, then, with tempered expectations, I should say, then you can enjoy the game for what it is. If I go and watch an under-11s game, I'm not expecting to see Premier League level football at an under-11s game. I'm not expecting to see Premier League football at a second division game, right? I'm going with a tempered expectation. Otherwise, I'm walking out after 10 minutes. I'm not watching this long ball business go back and forth, whatever. So it's about tempering expectations. I think what's happening is people are judging women's football, or some people, I should say, like the likes of Joey Barton, and they're doing a direct comparison between the women's game and the men's game. As you rightly said, it's still in its infancy at the moment in terms of the football, women's football being a professional sport that is now considered, one of the main and upcoming sports, in terms of women's sports. It's becoming extremely popular. Now, one of the things that I said, the comment that was said, why is it shoved down our throats? Nobody wants to watch it. Nobody's interested. The viewing figures, if I just give you the viewing figures for the England-Italy game, right? The viewing figures for the England-Italy game, which was the semi-final, the peak audience was 10.2 million viewers. Yeah, that was just on ITV alone. Yeah. They also had a streaming service with ITV and the peak viewers on ITV alone was 10.2 million. On the streaming service, it was 17.2 million. Yeah. So in total, you're looking at about 27 million. Now, obviously, on the streaming service, that could have been a mixture of Italy and England fans. We're not really talking about whose fans there. We're just talking about the demand and the interest in the game, right? To compare that to the men's game. So the previous semi-final that the men were in the previous Euros against the Netherlands, that brought in peak viewership at 20.3 million. That was the peak viewership, yeah? Average viewers was about 19.6 million. And those figures are ITVX and ITV combined, right? So if we're just looking at peak viewers on ITV alone, yeah, the women's game is bringing in around half of what the men's game brought in, 10.2 million versus 20.3 million. For me, that's what I would kind of expect. I'd kind of expect that. That's not low viewing figures. So I'm like, okay, but where the women's game is at the moment, in terms of its maturity, 10.2 million, okay, yeah.
If you're comparing it to the men's, which is established over a significant period of time, I think that's a kind of what do you call it? It's kind of like
it's a fair gap. You mean in terms of?
No, I just think you cannot compare.
You can't.
Women's game now, compared to the men's game.
Correct.
Now.
Correct. I mean, in the men's game, we've got, what we call household names, right? Yeah. Names that have been around forever and a day. Yeah. But I'd say not even just new players, but even the old players. When we talk about the Alan Shearers, the Gary Linekers, these are people that even if you don't watch football, you know who they are. Yeah. You understand? Whereas the women's game, as I said, our popularity is growing. So we're now starting to, I couldn't have sat here and talked about Chloe Kelly and Adjumang and Russo and, Mary Earps and Hannah Hampton. I couldn't have spoke about it, and Lucy Brown. I couldn't have spoke about all these people necessarily 3 or 4 years ago because the exposure wasn't there. We didn't have the access to the game. Yeah. Whereas there's more access now. Sky now showing the WSL. Yeah. So now we see these players on the TV every week. Yeah. So we now can start to kind of, and I spoke about, when Diogo Jota passed away, I talked about this emotional connection that we have with players. We're now starting to get that emotional connection with these players. Like we're seeing more of them on our TV screen. We're seeing more of them in interviews, so on and so forth. So for me, listen, that streaming figure of 17.2 million, that is the record amount of streams for ITVX in 2025 so far, in one day. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's clearly a demand there. So those that are saying, oh, why is it being forced down our throat? It's not being forced down our throat. They are supplying for a demand. Yeah, they're supplying for demand. Both ITV and BBC show games, they alternated between the games being shown between ITV and BBC, which again shows me the networks are even fighting to get the TV on their network. Otherwise, ITV would say, "Oh, no, forget it. BBC can have. We're not interested. It's not going to bring in enough figures for us to, to make it worth our while."
Yeah.
No, that's not how it is.